Hey. Hey, hi, hello. My name is Lydia. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you are interested in true crime like I am, I hope you stick around. A special hello to my returning subscribers. I am so happy to have you here. Today, I am having some technical difficulties. Yay, technology. So for most of this case, most of this video, I will be off camera. I won't be sitting down to talk to you one-on-one through my camera lens, and I do so apologize for that because I love the chance just to connect with you, even though it's virtually. So hopefully next time I will be on camera more, but as for this case, I hope you enjoy it even so, and let's continue with this true crime case for today. This is the case of the Valley Drive-In murders. The case I am bringing to you today took place in Louisville, Kentucky in 1973. The city of Louisville, even in 1973, was never considered a small town, with a population of over 746,000, and with that size of population comes an expectation that there will be crime. But the city of Louisville was still struck with a level of shock in these violent crimes that are still talked about today. And it happened in a place where people thought they were safe, where they went for joy and entertainment, the Valley Drive-In movie theater. Now, I don't know about you, but in the town that I live in right now, we have a drive-in movie theater, and my family has enjoyed it for years. Now, they certainly aren't as popular here in America as they were in the 70s and the 80s, but there are still a few around. But thinking back to 1973, the Valley Drive-In was a much-loved destination for families and couples, and not to mention it was a highly sought-after place of employment. And Rita Robbins, she considered herself lucky to get the job of ticket taker at the Valley Drive-In Theater. Rita was 17 years old and she felt right at home from the beginning with all her fellow employees. As a ticket taker, Rita was assigned to the small booth on the main dirt road between the drive-in itself and the main highway. Even back in the early 1970s, safety precautions were installed within the ticket booth just in case of emergency. An emergency button was located next to the cash register, and it could be pressed if help was needed from those working in the main concession stand. A telephone was also right within arm's reach of the employee who happened to be working at the ticket booth each night, if the need for help was deemed less urgent. On the evening of June 3rd, 1973, at around 10:55 p.m., the drive-in manager on duty, Lucille Hornsby, stopped by the ticket booth on her way home and spoke to Rita, who was sitting on a stool with the door propped open. Hornsby told Rita that she was going home, but she'd be returning in a few minutes. And as she pulled away from the booth, Lucille Hornsby noticed a car entering the drive-in, but she paid little attention to it. Rita Robbins, though, was on high alert as she watched with dread as cars entered into the drive-in movie theater lot. Rita had just recently experienced multiple incidents for 2 consecutive nights in which a car had pulled into and stopped just inside the start of the movie theater dirt road and, for no apparent reason, had just stopped right there. The car, positioned so that its headlights were shining directly into the ticket booth, blinded Rita from seeing the occupants of the car or even the type of vehicle that it was, and then the car would just drive away. And I'm sure you can imagine this in your own mind as I tell you this case. This is like a scene from a horror movie. So, maybe it was a gut instinct or her subconscious trying to warn her of something wicked on her personal horizon. Whatever the reason, Rita will never be able to tell us. What we do know is that this strange car and its occupants scared her enough to mention it to a fellow employee on the night of June 3rd, 1973. This employee was identified as John Southern, a concession stand worker. John walked out of the concession stand to bring Rita a soda and stayed for only a few moments before he set the soda on the counter and headed back to resume running the concession stand. Shortly after 11 p.m., Rita's manager, Lucille, arrived back at the movie theater, less than 10 minutes after she left, and immediately noticed the ticket booth was empty. She had been only gone for 10 minutes, so where was Rita? Lucille attempted to locate her, and in her search, she noticed several things. The soda that John Southern had brought Rita was still sitting on the counter just where he had left it, untouched. The cash drawer in the ticket booth was empty, and Rita's purse was still in the ticket booth. With a sense of unease, Lucille realized Rita was nowhere to be found and recognized that something bigger had happened. At the very least, maybe Rita had left, taking the money with her for safekeeping, or maybe Rita was in danger and left to seek help. Whatever the case, Lucille called the Louisville Police Department when she could not find Rita, and shortly thereafter, the police arrived on the scene. Now, keep in mind that this case occurred in the early 1970s, so when the police investigation began into Rita's disappearance, no one thought to start with a theory that Rita might have been abducted. Instead, the working theory in which the detectives started their investigation began with yet another case of an unhappy teenage runaway who just happened to empty the cash drawer on her way out. This theory should have been disproved right from the beginning, with a few simple items of proof present from the beginning at the scene. Rita had not only left her purse behind in the ticket booth, but she had left her father's car on the property, just where she had parked it when she had reported for work that evening. Had Rita truly decided to run away, overwhelming proof points to the fact that she would have taken her purse and a mode of transportation on her way to disappearing. And then the detectives on the scene became sidetracked again with their disenfranchised youth theory when they found a used marijuana pipe inside Rita's purse. Based on the thought that Rita might have been influenced by illegal drugs and was taking a dark path in her personal choices, they met with Rita's parents, Reed and Joan Robbins. When they were advised of the working theory that detectives currently had at that time as to what happened to their daughter, Reed and Joan quickly informed them that Rita was a happy person and that their daughter had never run away and never given them any kind of trouble, and they assured the police they had no knowledge of the marijuana use. Detectives were still skeptical as to the character reference Rita's parents said of her, but they knew that they had to cover all their bases in the off chance that foul play had been involved in Rita's mysterious disappearance. With this in mind, searches were conducted on June 4th, 1973 and June 13th, 1973 of the Valley Drive-In Theater on the ground and from the air. But no sign was found that could give the investigators a more clear indication of what happened to Rita. Rita's friends were also interviewed, and not a one had seen or heard from her. Rita was simply gone without a single trace. And then, on the evening of June 14, 1973, at around 11:30 p.m., another employee of the Valley Drive-In Theater, identified as Ronald Shoemaker, disappeared from the theater ticket booth in an eerily similar way as Rita had 11 days earlier. And in this case, this disappearance, the investigators were dumbfounded. This was a 21-year-old man who was also a soldier stationed at nearby Fort Knox. Had someone tried to abduct him, wouldn't he have fought? And if he had, wouldn't there have been more signs of a struggle and subsequent proof left behind? But what if this wasn't an abduction at all, investigators thought? What if this was, instead, a man who wanted to escape his current life? And what if Ronald and Rita had not been abducted? Investigators began to entertain the quote-unquote strong possibility that Rita and Ronald had run away together, and they went even further to say that it had been established that Rita used drugs, simply based off of the presence of that one marijuana pipe in her purse. Additionally, Ronald, as it turned out, was having domestic problems with his wife. So this may simply have been a planned plot between the two missing persons, the investigators thought. And to be fair, yes, it was true that Ronald and his wife Connie were having problems in their marriage, but there was no obvious signs pointing to him wanting to vanish. And on the contrary, Shoemaker, who was due to be honorably discharged from the Army on June 22, 1973, openly expressed his desire to become a lawyer, and he was making plans to attend the University of Louisville in pursuit of that dream. And he had also told some of his coworkers of his intention to remain at the drive-in, working there part-time. And so, thankfully, intelligence prevailed, and these flimsy theories were summed up with this conclusion by investigators. Quote, "It should be noted that there is no information to verify this assumption, and the case should be continued as if foul play was involved until they have been located." Unquote. As the investigation shifted back to a foul play theory in which Rita and Ronald had been abducted, it was revealed that Ronald had reported to management that a strange car had been sitting near the entrance of the drive-in. Coworkers would also tell police that on the nights they disappeared, Rita Robbins and Ronald Shoemaker had both seemed apprehensive. One concession stand employee even went as far as to say that she noticed that Rita had seemed a little jumpy, even describing her as wearing a grim face on the night she disappeared. This employee also said that Ronald was acting strange, like he was sick or scared, right before he was last seen. As extensive interviews continued with all the employees of the Valley Drive-In movie theater, a major break in the case had occurred on June 20th, 1973. Investigators were advised with certainty from people who specifically knew that two men were responsible for abducting and killing the two drive-in workers. These two suspects were identified as Danny Tetrick and James Sefchek. Investigators began to dig into these two suspects' history and found that Danny, a 23-year-old white male, was a Kentucky prison system parolee. Danny, along with James, a 19-year-old white male, were both arrested for disorderly conduct and armed robbery of a man for $210 on the highway, not far from the Valley Drive-In. As investigators zeroed in on this major lead of these two likely suspects, they received another tip, this time anonymous. On July 9th, a call was received by investigators stating, quote, "Danny Tetrick killed Rita and Ronald and left one of the bodies at Valley Village Field and the other at Weaver's Run Road," end quote. The caller then ended the call by saying he hated Danny and calling him a, quote, "son of a bitch." This anonymous call proved to be accurate, and the very next day, investigators found the badly decomposed remains of Ronald Shoemaker. As the investigation closed in on Danny and James, investigators met with and interviewed a 15-year-old girl who had been with the two men when they robbed, abducted, and murdered Ronald Shoemaker. The 15-year-old girl told the investigators that Danny had wanted to obtain bail money for her 20-year-old sister, and he had told her that he planned to borrow the money that night. This witness went on to say that she, and then James Sefcik and Danny Tetrick, set out to, quote-unquote, borrow the money. Driving his mother's car, James had lain a sawed-off shotgun across his lap. And when James turned into the entrance of the drive-in, the girl asked Danny if this is where he was going to borrow the money, and he said yes. But when they had pulled up to the ticket booth and Ronald had come out to take their money, James aimed the shotgun straight at his face and told him to get in the back seat of the car and lie on the floor. Ronald, seeing the shotgun pointed straight at his face, obeyed this order, climbed inside the car, and lay down on the floor. And moments later, they were gone, turning left onto Dixie Highway as they made their way to the secluded area off of Weaver's Run Road. And according to this 15-year-old witness, Danny had held the shotgun, James had said, "Get his wallet," and after robbing Ronald, Danny had made him walk toward a ditch. At this time, the girl said she heard a shot, and Danny then attempted to return to the car, but James had shouted, "Shoot him again." The 15-year-old witness went on to say that upon being shot, Ronald had already rolled down the hill, and this second hit of the shotgun had struck Ronald in the legs. Danny then followed up by shooting Ronald twice with the shotgun and then hit him in the head with the butt of the firearm, which wound up being the final death blow to Ronald's life. On July 12, 1973, Danny and James were advised of the 15-year-old witness's first-hand account implicating them in the death of Ronald. And then they subsequently confessed to the abduction and the murder of Ronald Shoemaker and Rita Robbins. And as for the death of Rita Robbins, Danny apparently had an attack of conscience, leading the investigators to the location of her body, telling them that it bothered him that this girl was buried somewhere where the parents did not know where the body was, and he would like to see her be given a proper burial. In further interrogations of Danny and James, it was revealed that if they had not been stopped, they would have kept going back to the drive-in to rob, if not abduct and kill, subsequent ticket takers. Danny Tetrick and James Sefcik pled guilty to the robbery and the murders of Ronald Shoemaker and Rita Robbins. James Sefcik was convicted of being an accessory before the fact and will be considered for parole, whereas Danny Tetrick was ordered to serve out his life sentence in prison. As for the Valley Drive-In movie theater, it is now closed. The large movie screen was relocated to the Holiday Drive-In in Mitchell, Indiana, and the lot where the movie theater was located originally in Louisville, Kentucky, is now overgrown, an overgrown field. Only two faint roads leading into the property are the last of any signs of the once loved, now notorious history of the Valley Drive-In Theater. Rest in peace to Rita Robbins and Ronald Shoemaker. May their memories be a blessing to all of those who loved and cared for them. Rest in peace. Well, that's the end of today's video. I hope you found it interesting, and if you liked it, please leave a like, and if you really liked it, please consider subscribing, and let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I do so appreciate connecting with you. But overall, I know your time is valuable, and I do so appreciate that you spent some of it watching this video with me. And until next time, everyone, I really hope you take care out there. It's rough, and I'll be thinking of you. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.